Devontae, would that be okay if, let's say, we waited till 6:35 and then we officially kick things off, or is that too late?
No, that's fine. I'm at the place where I need to be right now. I'm doing a couple meet and greets with CC presidents and Presidents Council presidents, so I'm fine. 6:35 is fine.
Okay, cool. So we'll do that, folks. So you can either put yourself on mute and kill the video for a bit, or do both. But we'll do that at 6:35. We'll officially get started.
Hey, Carl, I just wanted to, and Greg, I see you're here as well. I just wanted to let you both know that we have been joined by Amber Hogue and also Kayla Nicholas from our Youth Leadership Council. So just wanted to let you know they're on the line with us tonight.
Awesome. Welcome.
Both Amber and Gabrielle are with us from the Hogue family.
Excellent. So
Fantastic.
Welcome, you two. Good evening. Right, and so Amber and Gabrielle, just a heads up for you that we're currently waiting until 6:35. So we're just giving people about 2 more minutes or so to join us, and then we will officially kick off this Education, Libraries, and Cultural Affairs Committee meeting. Okay, 6:35. Anya, if you haven't already, could you please start recording?
You're good to go, Carl.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And so, folks, good evening. It is Tuesday, October 26th. And so this is the first meeting of the Education, Libraries, and Cultural Affairs Committee and Community Board 14 in Brooklyn for the 2021-22 school year. So thank you all very much for coming. And so I am one of your co-chairs of the committee for this year. The other one is Greg Alvarez. And so, Greg, could you just quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody. Greg Alvarez, and look forward to this year's proceedings.
Excellent. And so for our agenda today, folks, we have 2 items. So actually 3 items, right? So the first is a public schools update, and then the second one is a state of capital projects within our community district, and then the third is other business. And so for number 1, Devontae, would it be incorrect of me to say you'd be speaking on behalf of Superintendent Bove, or is that correct?
That would be, I wouldn't say that would be correct.
Okay, so I'll take that back. My bad.
Oh, no, it's fine. I'll just be speaking on behalf of our FACE department, our Family and Community Empowerment department. And I'll be giving updates is it okay if I introduce myself and just say what I'll be talking about? And
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
You can go right into it. Yep.
Okay. First off, I want to thank you all for allowing me to be in your community tonight. My name is Devontae Graham, Brooklyn Borough Director for our Faith Department. I believe I joined this community board meeting, I believe like a little over a year ago. I know I gave my first presentation. Since that time, my role has changed a lot because formerly then I was with the Community Affairs Department. Our Community Affairs Department was a small special ops team. It consisted of like 5 of us. And we really operated on the fringes of the DOE. We didn't have to deal with the DOE bureaucracy. We kind of like did our own thing, developed our own partnerships, expanded the way we wanted to expand. We thought community should be engaged. And so during that time, I was working in the Bronx when I first came to DOE in September of 2019. The first time I came in contact with a community board is like with I think the budget consultation meetings. And I was always asking my colleague Michelle, like, hey, how do we interact with community boards? I think this is a great place, a lot of community involvement. They got a lot of constituents, and they seem really engaged and passionate about the work. She informed me, like, hey, we don't really engage community boards like that outside of this time, like budget consultation meetings and things like that. We rarely like interact. There's no rules that set up how we should interact with community boards. And so I took that challenge on, like being that bridge from the central DOE standpoint, building out to community boards, because I think this community boards are advocate for community members. It's a way that we can elevate community voice. I thought it was another pipeline for us to communicate with the members that we may miss during our other engagements. So I started outreach with the Bronx community boards first, but naturally, because I live in Brooklyn, I started interacting more with the Brooklyn community boards. And I met with Executive Superintendent Watts and also Executive Superintendent Barbara Freeman and told her about this idea that I have. Because I noticed when I came to get these presentations, I was only given like top line information and things like that. And I just felt like that something was missing, like that home touch was missing. So I asked all the executive superintendents to get their superintendents on the line. We're going to do a meet and greet between community boards and superintendents. And that meeting happened last year, I think in February of 2020, where we did a meet and greet. So every district manager and community board, I think it was district manager and every educational chair, we tried to get matched up with their superintendent to be involved with meetings like this so they can have that intimate community conversations and things like that. And that's why I hate that Superintendent Bove couldn't make it today. But that's something that I'll reconvene and just check back in on. I think we'll reconvene all the superintendents and all the district managers, the community boards to make sure we're still aligned and still committed to that same goal and that same vision that I had last year of how this thing can work. But yeah, so my role so far in FACE, I took over this role approximately like last month and a half ago. And it really involves how we engage families on a CEC, all that parent leadership structure, like CEC, president's councils, and things like that. So it kind of getting away from that community affairs work, working with community boards. But we're trying to find a way, and I'm committed to finding a way how we implement community boards into our FACE work, because I think that's community as well. So be on the lookout for emails for me and things like that. So that's probably why you haven't been hearing from me over these last few months, because just my role has kind of shifted a little bit. But I definitely want to keep community boards in the fold. And tonight I'll be speaking on, just want to talk about a little bit of school reopening, how that's going, the attendance in the district and things like that, but also update you on the upcoming engagements that they're doing around Brilliant NYC and also GNT. So I can just jump right in. Attendance in the district, I think Community Board 14, correct me if I'm wrong, sits in Community School District 22. Is that correct?
For the most part, that's our biggest overlap.
Okay, so the attendance in District 22 as of this moment is 90%. What else districts does 14 cover? I can look at that right now as well. I'll just give you an update on that.
We jet out a little bit into 21, and there's at the top of the district is 17. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so 21 is at 88% attendance, and 17 is at 86% attendance rate at this moment. And I think the biggest thing was going into school reopening and keeping it safe was getting everyone that's going to be inside the school building vaccinated. At this current moment, 95% of the DOE staff, full-time staff, is vaccinated. I think 96% of our teachers are vaccinated, and 99% of our principals are vaccinated. And I think those numbers shot up really due to the vaccine mandate that was implemented, I think, in the beginning of October, not sure what date, I think it was like October 4th or some, meeting that deadline. And we see those numbers shot up during that time right there. And I know I get questions a lot. Like, hey, Devontae, are NY schools been impacted by the shortage of nurses like other places in the country and things like that? We're here in our system in the DOE, 99% of our schools have a nurse. The nurses are getting vaccinated. And so we're working on filling those gaps. I always get questioned about school personnel. Hey, how's the lunch lady and the lunch personnel, the cafeteria personnel? Over 93% of the food personnel is vaccinated. So students will be getting a nutritious meal every day. Another big question is like, are you considering a vaccination mandate for students? We get that question all the time. And the answer is that not at this time. We think getting the staff vaccinated will go a long way. We expect the 100%, well, to be in the building, 100% of the employees have to be vaccinated. So we're going to lean on that for a little bit before we put a vaccination mandate for students. I'll pause right there. Do you have any questions about that, what I just mentioned, before I move into it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So first, so Devontae, thank you very much for that. So thank you very much for those numbers. The first question I have basically is for the attendance, and then the second one is for the vaccination rates you mentioned. And so the first one for the attendance, for the 3 districts that you mentioned, 90% for 22, 88% for 21, and 86% for 17. Is that attendance as of this morning? Is that attendance as of, the first day of school, September 13th? Like, what is the window for those attendance percentages?
This is all the way from the first day of school to October 5th. That's the last update.
Okay.
I have.
Okay, got you. Thank you very much for that. Got you.
And what was your second point?
And then, sure. Okay. And then the second question was, when you were talking about the percentage rates for vaccination, right? For the principals, for the school personnel, and the teachers, were those specifically district-wide? Were those citywide? Like, what were those numbers referring to?
Those were citywide. So 96% of all teachers in the DOE citywide are vaccinated. 99% of the principals citywide in DOE are vaccinated. And 95% of full-time DOE staff citywide are vaccinated.
Got you. And so then the question I have for you, you may have the information now or you may not, but then the question I have for you is, would you happen to have those rates for, District 22, District 21, and District 17?
No, but I can get those dates. I can break those down. I can get that information to you.
Okay, that's a question.
Yeah, I can definitely.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, definitely get that information to you.
Okay, no problem. And then that's
okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say exactly what you said. Greg or anyone else on the call, do you have any questions for Devontae about the updates he's given so far, on these schools?
Yeah, Carl, I just had a few quick questions as well, and then we'll turn it over to the rest of the committee. First question was on, I guess, connected to vaccination rates. Have you seen any issues in terms of staffing or the loss of staffing as a result of the mandate?
Oh yes. Some of my colleagues, I've seen it there as well. Someone just like, hey, it's live. I don't feel like someone telling me what to do. So I definitely felt that from my colleagues. But I work in Central, so that's the only place I've seen it. And I just heard stories about what's going on outside of Central. But I definitely seen it inside of DOE Central, inside of Tweed. Had a lot of colleagues that's like, hey, I just can't do it anymore. And they just walked away. And I respect their choice.
Well, have you seen, as a result of that, have you seen any issues in terms of, staffing shortages or, problems in terms of not having sufficient staff in certain areas because of this?
Yes. Matter of fact, some of my FACE team got redeployed like the first day after the mandate went in. I think it was that following Monday when it went into effect. A lot of my colleagues got deployed to schools to cover, service paras, hall monitors, and things like that. So yes, I've seen like some shortage in that area.
Okay, and then thank you for that. And then just a question on the attendance rates. Do you see any year over year or measurement differences in terms of what those rates are in comparison to any trends
Um,
that we should be concerned about?
I can see I'll look at District 22. So in September of 2019, it was a 94% attendance rate. Um, in September of 2020, like in the pandemic, it was 88% attendance rates in 22. And right now we're sitting at 90 in like 2021. For what's the other, so for 17, so in 2019, it was a 92% attendance rate. In September of last year, 2020, was an 84% attendance rate. And right now we're at 86% based on September 2021. And what was the last district so I got 22, 17. What was the last district?
21, I believe.
21. So in 2019, it was 94% attendance rate. In 2020, I was at 83% attendance rate. And right now we're sitting at 88% attendance rate. So the biggest drop off came from September 2020, really, in that area. So that's the lowest we had attendance rate for those 3 districts.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll open it up to other questions at this point. Are there any other questions that we have?
Okay. If not, I'll just move on to like classroom closures and things like that.
Well, actually, we do have
okay.
a question. Stephen Cohen, please.
Okay.
I apologize because I showed up late, but I was just wondering if there was, if there was any differences between the elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools in the districts in our community.
See, I wouldn't have that. I don't have access to that data. Well, I can get it, but I don't have it on hand right now to get that. But that's another question I can follow up with and just have that a detailed email with all those numbers there. So I believe Superintendent Bove will have those numbers that I can just reach out to her and ask her to send those over.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions at this point. So yes, if you'd like to continue with your presentation, that would be great.
Okay, and another, I'm just going like the popular questions I get. So, like, what would cause for a entire classroom to be closed? So after September 27th, on the deal, we stopped closing classrooms if the student tested positive. So unvaccinated students who are wearing face coverings and have maintained at least 3 feet of distance in a classroom from a student who tests positive will not be considered a close contact and will not have to quarantine. The only time the whole class would quarantine is that case was an adult, as a teacher. If a student exposure to a positive student occurs when the positive student was unmasked, like in places like in a lunch or in a shared space other than a classroom, such as a gym or auditorium, any unvaccinated student who was within 6 feet or more for more than 10 minutes of the positive student will be considered a close contact in that aspect. I know that was a mouthful. Do you want me to repeat that? Okay, I can repeat that because that always get me.
Yeah, please do. I know that's a lot. Yes, please do. That'd be very helpful. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. So after September 27th, the DOE stopped closing the entire classroom when there was a positive case for students. Unvaccinated students who are wearing face coverings and have maintained at least 3 feet of distance in the classroom from a student who tests positive will not be considered a close contact and will not have to quarantine. If student exposure to a positive student occurs when a positive student was unmasked, such as like at lunch, or in a shared space other than the classroom, such as the gym or auditorium, any unvaccinated student who was within 6 feet or more for more than 10 minutes of the positive student would be considered a close contact. Did we get a little understanding? Did we get a little better understanding right there?
A little bit, and then Devontae, question for you. That guidance that you just read, I apologize. I'm joining via audio because I have some, laptop problems on my end. So the question I have for you is, I don't know if you're sharing your screen or anything like that, but ultimately the guidance that you just shared on that, is there a place on the DOE website, where families can read that information? Because if so, then I'm wondering if before you leave tonight's meeting, if you could post that link in the chat, you know?
Yeah, these are my notes. So what I can do, I can send these to Sean and also Anya to share out.
Okay.
So I'll send all my notes that I do tonight with all like the policies and things like that. I'll share that
Sure.
with them through email and they can send it out. Because I'm on my cell phone right now because I'm out right now. That's why I'm not on camera.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so yes, I can do that for you as well.
Thank you. Much appreciated.
We have a question from Nina.
My name is Nina Sabgir, and I'm a CB14 member. My question is, you have this whole list of if this, then that. How is that verified?
How is what verified?
You know, if the child was more than 10 feet away, if they had a mask, if they were unmasked during lunch. I mean, let's say a child comes to school, you know, goes home that night, child is feeling ill. Now, you know, parents say, oh, gee,
Yeah.
The child tests positive for COVID. This child has been everywhere and potentially unmasked under certain circumstances, potentially closer than a certain distance under certain circumstances. So you've got this, you know, well, they won't quarantine the whole class unless, but how are all of those contingencies verified?
Yeah. And so that's an investigation that's going to go on between like our Department of Health and our test and trace folks. I'm not very familiar with that procedure, but they do the investigation in the situation room that we have inside the DOE, and they really come down with that final judgment through their own policies and procedures, how they track down information, who they talk to, and whatnot, and things like that. They do that procedure. Our test and trace in the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, they do that procedure for us.
Does that answer your question, Nina?
Well, as a nurse, it sounds a bit dicey, but okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Some of this stuff is just like but I definitely understand. But that's how the process is tracked down between test and trace and the Department of Health. They really do the investigation in our situation room.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, I'm going to jump in to say that was Julia Bove. The superintendent has 5 minutes to join us. So if the co-chairs want to acknowledge, and Devontae, maybe you want to yield.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Good evening. I'm in the middle of 2 different meetings. I apologize for the tardiness. And I just wanted to say hello to everyone and thank you for everything you do. I can stay on for about 10 to 12 minutes. So good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening. Actually, we're just addressing some questions from the committee members and community. We actually have a question from Joanne Joseph.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Superintendent, thank you for joining. Dante, thank you so much for your presentation so far.
Dante, thank you.
My question actually is a bit of a supplement and relates to what Nina was asking about and the policies that Dante mentioned about the masks and the closure of classrooms. Since it's kind of a little convoluted way of deciding when to close or when to quarantine students, is the Department of Education discussing mask mandates for the students and the staff inside schools?
Yes, I mean, there's currently it's not a matter of they deciding to discuss it in the future. There already is a mask mandate. So at the moment, there is a mask mandate. And to your larger question about what happens when a classroom is closed or quarantined, I believe I got onto the tail end of Dante's answer when he said the situation room. Just to give you a synopsis, just to give you a quick rundown. Let's say a principal learns of a particular case. He or she, the principal, has to call it into the situation room, which is at Central. Central then gets not only the information of who the person is, the individual, whether it be an adult or a student, who the person had in contact with, whether it be a student with other students, maybe at lunchtime, maybe in the classroom, if it's a teacher, how close in proximity, because we try as much as possible to stay within 3 feet of each other, even with the mask. Let me just Get rid of this call for a second. I am with you. Don't give up. Okay. So the situation room really dictates which students are to quarantine and which adult. It all depends on so many different variables. And the variables are, was there contact within less than 3 feet? So I'll give you an example. Let's say Julia was in your class and I walked back and forth because I had to run to the ladies' room and I walked past so many students. The principal would document all of that, and then situation room makes the determination of who and when, who gets closed. Okay, so that was like a broad picture of how it really happens. But to your specific question, everyone wears a mask in the building. When I walk in, I have to tell you that I not only wear one mask, I'm being honest, I wear two, because I have a 90-year-old mom. And when I go visit her, I want to make sure that I keep her as safe as possible.
Thank you so much for that.
Oh,
Thank you.
anytime. Sure, sure.
So, oh, Sean, I see your hand just went up.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask sort of a general question about, Devante shared with us the attendance rates in the districts that overlap with ours. And you might already know that we are a district, as a community district, that has been identified by the Department of Education as a district in need of seats. And I know that there's been some changes in that. The last time I looked at the Blue Book, it looks like our overutilization percentages are down slightly, but most of the elementary schools and middle schools in the northern end of our district are still over enrolled. So when when things settle and we're back more to a more normal, as we remember normal being, situation with all of students in the classroom, and then we're also building a lot of development, a lot of residential development in the district. So could we work together to identify where our population bubbles are in those schools so that we can hone in on exactly what grades we're still over enrolled in, and where the most severe overcrowding is? Because we've got schools that are 100, historically have been 136% enrollment.
Sure. So Sean, that's a great question, especially because we see a return of our families. I have to tell you, I'm actually excited that a lot of the families who left our district and our neck of the woods, a lot of them are coming back. I think because they find it safe, and maybe they have to return to work themselves. I'm not sure. But we do have, as you mentioned, near capacity and overflowing, especially in the northern end. You are extremely right. So I meet with district planning once a month, and we go over those those numbers. And there are some schools that are over 100% utilized, even in these COVID times. So what we do is we generally speak about where do we put in extra classes, what rezoning we do. We just, right before COVID hit in 2019, the tail end of 2019, we rezoned a lot of the southern schools for that very reason. We had schools at 120, 130 capacity. So now we are taking a very close look on the northern end, and there will be readjustments, as we call it, readjustments of shifting zones and so forth. And of course, we're going to work with all, not just CEC, but of course, all our constituents, which include you. So you will be part of the discussion. And please note, you may remember about 5 years ago, there was a new school, 889, 890, that is flourishing, and beautiful, beautiful building, almost at full capacity, because the 4th grade will next year, come September, be a 5th grade. And then we have a continuum of schools. So soon we are going to think of rezoning, especially in the area of, let's say, the Brooklyn College area. So that particular area needs to be really looked at. And I would like you, as, when I say you, the collective you, as partners.
Good. Yeah, I know the community would appreciate being keyed in on those conversations early, because nobody likes those, even positive changes, when they are changes by surprise. And just so you know, Yvette Knight from the School Construction Authority is on with us too, and we talk a lot to them about.
Oh yes, I
capacity.
see Yvette. Yep, we speak quite often, especially about some of our schools that had either construction projects or schoolyards that needed to be fixed. Hi, Yvette, good to see you. We worked hand in hand actually with the schoolyard at 152 in back of 315. We worked on getting a resolution on a schoolyard near 139 that needed some fencing. So we're always looking and always working with my partners in school construction.
And if I can add to that, the SCA is always monitoring and looking at, seat need. And our capital plan will be out shortly and will be available online for everyone to review what the determination is around seat need and how we're going to address that. So.
And the seat need is especially powerful, as Yvette mentioned, when we review our elementary schools in particular, because we have an influx of families who upon middle school leave the city because they get to a certain age. There are certain fears and certain unknowns when the child becomes 13, 14, and we sort of dip off in numbers in our middle schools, but we're working on keeping those families as well, just reassuring them that we are not only conducive to a great education here, but we tell them statistics. People that leave come back. So why leave?
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
Yeah, so we have Nina and Dwayne. You both have your hands up. I know you've asked previous questions. Do you have any additional questions before we move on?
My apologies, my hand goes down.
Okay.
Same here. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem.
So then, Greg,
Yes.
I do have one question for Superintendent Beauvais, and so Superintendent Beauvais, thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Since schools are in person, I guess the question I have is, does this mean officially that the remote learning is completely finished? And if so, what happened to the devices that were given to families while remote learning and then the hybrid learning was in session?
Right. So let me tell you that remote learning will always be among us. I'm going to tell you something. Today, my daughter goes to Fordham University, and because of the storm or the impending storm, they sent her an email at 5. I think she was almost on the way out. At 5:30 in the morning, they said we're gonna open up late because she doesn't dorm there. She's at home, so she travels, and the classes won't start until 12. So she has 2 classes before 12, and wouldn't you know it, they went Zooming. They just go right onto Zoom. Then they opened up in the afternoon, but some classes were canceled, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story to tell you that remote learning is now going to be part of our fabric. What does that mean? That means on snow days, when parents had to scurry and say, okay, there was no work being sent home, there will always now be work through asynchronous, what's called asynchronous, where students go online through Google Classroom or Zoom or what have you, and they will have work signed by their teachers. So in the olden days when we used to jump up and down, yay, snow day, those days are gone, because now kids will have to do work no matter what. Election day. Let me give you a perfect example. Next week, I think it's next week already, Tuesday, students are going to be off, but they're not free from work. They will be doing asynchronous work. So that terminology, remote learning, remains with us. And it's also good because, as I mentioned before, and I believe even before I got on, if a school has a particular case that warrants a closure or a partial closure of a classroom, those students being sent home and having to stay home for the 10 days will not miss a beat. They're going to continue their work a la remote as we did last year. But to your point, what happens to the iPads and the laptops, Chromebooks, what have you? They're still in the hands of the kids, and schools have ample. Last year, and I remember as soon as COVID hit, I said, principals, try to spend as much money as you can on these devices because every child has to have one in his or her hands. So whether they're returned and they're able to be distributed yet again, or they're already in the hands of kids, they're going to be ready to be used at the moment's notice, just like today. You know, we were lucky the storm wasn't horrible, but you could imagine that it could have been a lot worse. And that means that the kids would have been home with no work? No. We've got ground to cover. We're not going to have them sit there without doing any work. They're going to do asynchronous work for us. Okay, does that answer your question?
It did, you know, just because it shows that for those people who did get the devices, they would still get them. I guess it remains to be seen, you know,
Yeah.
if we do end up in a situation for whether or other reasons where a school does need to shut down, then, you know, would the DOE end up implementing that kind of remote learning, and would that be like a school by school basis, or, you know, kind of a broader directive? So, but yeah,
So,
thank you.
yeah, so there is no movement in the area of going fully remote. I don't have a crystal ball. No one here does. We don't know what tomorrow brings. But at the moment, we are open, and it is our plan and our desire to stay open. And even if there's a classroom closure or a partial closure of a classroom, the rest of the kids go to school.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Bove.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. And I just have two more hands here, and then
Sure.
we move on here.
I will stay with you until those two questions are answered.
Okay. Well, actually, Devante, I think you have your hand raised. Did you want to inject something into the conversation?
Oh yes, I know Superintendent Bove is running low on time, but I do want to see if you can just speak into it. I know we're going to be doing our G&T engagements beginning in October and November.
Yes.
Did you want to speak a little bit about that, because those are
Sure.
coming up really quickly and things like
Sure.
that?
So our district will have a town hall, an audience for all our parents and everyone who wants to join November 10th. And please forgive me if I'm not too sure if it's 6 or 6:30, but it's going to be on our website. Flyers are going to go home, but it's November 10th. It's a Wednesday evening, either 6 or 6:30. And I don't have my calendar down here, but those are the two possibilities. And so, Demonte, to the point that often parents are afraid, like, oh my God, they're getting rid of G&T. I really want everyone to see this as a reimagining, a time for us to really create something so beautiful and so special for all our students. And so let me just share with you the way it is now and the way we envision it in the near future. Right now, the only way a child could get into the G&T is if he or she takes an exam at the mere age of 4 years old. And this exam basically is a measure of vocabulary and more or less the language development of that child. Really doesn't take anything else into consideration, such as the other gifts that children come to the table with. I'm a math person. I would never have been deemed gifted if they didn't measure my math. And so understand that I think right now, when we reimagine what is called gifted and talented, we start with the premise that every child has a gift. From the bottom of my heart, I believe that. There are some students that excel in art. There are some students that excel in sports. There are some students that excel in science, and so on and so forth. So it is really up to the educator to pull out those gifts and to really make them shine. And through this program that the mayor and the chancellor brought forth, named Brilliant New York City, in a nutshell, it basically is whereby new way of teaching will start as young as right now. Our 3Ks and 4Ks in kindergarten are actually already introduced to the ways in which there's investigation, hands-on materials, world applications. What we learn has to be applied, otherwise it's really not knowledge. And by doing so, these kids are going to be immersed in really high level, rigorous expectations and instruction. The teachers will be trained as per this new curriculum. And then when the child is older, I apologize, I'm just talking to you later. I'm just keep pushing. Talk to you later. Talk to you later. I have a list already. So when the child gets older, at the end of grade 2 into the start of grade 3, that child will then be assessed for whatever advancements he or she brings to the table. In my case, hopefully, would have been an advancement in mathematics. Maybe in your case, Devante, I'm making this up. Let's say you love science. You have such an exploratory mind that your strength would have been shining through that particular discipline. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's where we are with the reimagination of how we teach. And it starts as early as right now with the 3K, 4K in kindergarten, and then it's going to proceed up. And I don't want parents to feel like, oh my goodness, we're getting rid of. No, we're teaching each child to each child's strength. And I think everyone here would agree that that's a good thing.
Thank you for that. Okay, so again, we don't want to take too much more of your time. I see again
Okay.
those two questions: Steve Cohen and Dwayne Joseph. Stephen, if you go first. I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Just with
Okay.
regard to the potential change in district lines that you were talking about, Superintendent Beauvais, I remember the last time when 889 came into
Yeah,
being.
it did not go well then. I remember, I'll be the first one to admit those lines and it's not that the lines didn't go well. I believe the communication could have been better.
Yeah,
So
it was before I was on the board, and I don't know the extent to which the board was involved, but in these types of situations, what sort of role does the board usually take, or like what are best practices in that regard in terms of making sure there's community involvement and that sort of thing?
So, you know, looking back, it's always easier to make the changes and to, you know, like what's that saying? Quarterback on a Monday, you could see all the mistakes, right? Whoever likes football, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Quarterback,
The Tuesday morning
on a
quarterback.
Monday,
Yes.
you should have done this, you
Yeah.
should have done that.
Yeah.
When 889 was created, and I remember we moved the lines of 139 and 217, CEC was involved in it. I believe, and again, looking back, I can now say this with all sincerity and transparency, we could have involved, I believe, folks on this call to a greater degree so that you really know the community and the people in and out of that area. So if we ever move, and if we have to move any lines, I really want to work not only with CEC, but certainly with the directors here so that we can be all well informed and have input from everyone. So to that promise, when the data tells us it's time to move a line, I don't want to be just working with CEC and then bring it to you. I'd like to have everybody's voice at the table.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll close with Mr. Joseph. Why don't you
Sure.
have the last word here?
Sure. Just to quickly jump back to Carl's question about the equipment given to the kids for, you know, during the pandemic to access school. I recently read an article about a program that allowed for people to get discounts on broadband access, and it made me think about whether or not how much our school districts are impacted by broadband deserts. Are you able to speak to what percentage of students within the district are impacted by a lack of broadband access, and whether or not, if you're not able to, is there a plan for the DOE or for the district to do a survey to find out?
So
And impacted?
So the DOE has already, a lot of the devices that are given out are with internet capabilities. So I just want to make it clear, I do not have the percentage of how many of those devices are actually in our hands. But I do want to say, and Devante just gave me the thumbs up, like I just gave the right answer. Thank you. But I could tell you that the devices, especially in the last batch, because you could imagine as a district, and when I say district, I don't mean just 22, I mean the entire New York City. We had to put in thousands and hundreds and thousands and so many devices. So the latest batches all come equipped with broadband. So Mr. Joseph, to that degree, I can't give you a percentage like we got 6% of that, but we're in good shape. We have, I would tend to say that right now, the schools, and if you hear that a school right now, if a child doesn't have a device in his or her hand, let me tell you what could be happening. I just came from Huddy 2 days ago. Today's Tuesday. Well, last Thursday, I was at Huddy, and the principal there hired a technician to call back all these devices grade by grade, class by class. And guess what this technician is doing? Fixing them, repairing them, and then when they go back out to the hands of the kids, they're as good as new. Because you could imagine, and you know how kids are with these devices, they break quite readily. I'm already on my second laptop since COVID. So understand that every child has a device. If it's not a Chromebook, it's an iPad. If it's not an iPad, it's a laptop. So I stand before you to really say I'm confident that the children have the devices they need. And in the event that there's a new child coming in, a new admit, it's just a matter of time that that child gets a device.
Thank you. I mean, my question was more about access, broadband access, not so much devices. I just wanted to know whether our district schools or our students had enough like if we have a large landscape of broadband deserts, let's say. I know other school districts suffer that way.
Yeah, at the beginning of COVID, I would say yes, we did have pockets of deserts within our community, but right now we've really addressed those because, like I mentioned, a lot of the devices that are coming from Central have built-in Wi-Fi. So there are capabilities that even in the desert, so-called pockets where maybe internet is lower or not as fast, not as available, and so forth, the DOE did take care of that particular pocket.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And thank you. Thank you so much, Superintendent Bovee. Thank you to
I
Devontae
promised
Graham.
you, I told you, I finished up my meeting real fast, and before I do anything else, I said I have to jump on at minimum just to say hello to all of you and thank you for the work you do. Good to see my friend Yvette there again. And when I get more information about where our families are and what lines have to be moved and everything, right now is not the time to do any of that. Right now is just a time to heal. We've gone through a lot. Our kids have gone through a lot. Our families have gone through a lot. Our teachers and principals. Right now, it's just trying to stable the ground and really to move forward so that our kids catch up and really catapult ahead. And that's my priority, to make sure that we know exactly what Sean needs, what Julia needs, what Yvette needs. So this way we can move forward and catch up and move in the direction that someone said before, and I forget it was you, Mr. Alvarez, whatever normal means. I don't even know what normal means now because it changes every day. But we have to hit a point where our kids are safe, learning in school, happy in school. We're paying a lot of attention to social emotional. That wasn't brought up right now, but remember that as much as superintendent, I want to push the math and the science and the ELA, I have to make sure that my kids are well and socially, emotionally. We are hurting. Sometimes we don't show it, but the kids have to really make sure that they're in a good place. And that's my priority right now. And anything that you could all do to help us get there, much appreciated. Devontae, thank you for stepping in. I knew I had, my calendar sometimes gets things that I don't even put there. They just show up. And so I wanted to make sure that I found space and time for all of you. So thank you and be well.
Thank you both for making it work. I know it was a hustle. Thank you.
Not a problem. When I
No
promise
problem.
you, I promise. Bye, everyone. Be well.
Be well.
Bye.
All right, see you all later.
Okay, I think now we can, Carl, we can transition to our next speaker who has been, who's joined us the whole way as well. So thank you so much, Ms. Knight, for being part of the first half of our presentation here as well. Yvette Knight, the manager in the external affairs at the New York City School Construction Authority, and she's here to speak on the state of capital projects in our district. And so, Ms. Knight, I turn it over to you.
Well, thank you for having me. This is actually the first time I've been here. I think I was here last year, but my other colleague was the prominent speaker. So I want to say thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet all of you. I know Sean very well, who have engaged in the past and on several other meetings. And so when I got the invitation for this meeting, I actually went on your website, and it's great that you have a list of all your schools in your community board. Not all CBs have that, so it made it a little easier for me. So my plan this evening is to, look at that list and to let you know what projects are related to this school. And there's schools without projects, so I will talk to the schools where there are projects. And so I am going to begin with the first two with issues. The first one being one where it's a delay and not completed per the schedule. And the second one in terms of it not starting per the schedule. So the first school I will speak about is K-17. And some of you may or may not have heard from that school or people in the community about the project at that school, but there is a delay on that project. We had a meeting this afternoon with the principal. We unfortunately had to deliver not good news, because while we were moving and working for what we hope was been a completion in October, circumstances dictated for us to provide a new completion date of January. We have been hit with that project. COVID was a big factor. And I know that the issue of school closure and how do you close schools and why you close schools, that was a big deal for us, because pre-September and I think pre the summer, maybe, I think it changed in June or July, whenever a classroom shut down, we had to stop our work. I mean, it was just no question. If there was what we call a dot on the DOE website related to a school, we had to shut down. So in terms of that project, I did the calculation based on the dots and based on bad weather. For example, it's raining tonight, and so we can't do the work. This is an exterior project involving masonry, roofing, and windows. So the contractor is not able to work in this bad weather. So when I did my presentation to that community, my calculation said we lost about 40% of our time for completion. And so moving forward, we have a vaccination mandate for people who work on our projects. And it's very well known in the industry that they're not vaccinated. And so when you're required to be vaccinated to work on one of our projects and you don't get your vaccine, then you can't work. So we've been hit with that as well. And I think it's been publicized that there are material shortages and trouble getting material. So all of that has impacted this project, as well as what we told the principal this afternoon, having managing the general contractor. So those are three things that that has resulted in the further delay. So that's K-17. The other school where we've delayed our start has to do is K-139. We're doing a playground renovation at that building, at that school. We were ready to start, and then we had a request from the school to phase the project. And so we are in that process, and she wanted phasing because of lineup. And so phasing means we'll do a part of the playground and have her have access for the second part. So we're working really closely with her in order for us to be able to start. And the delay in even starting on the phasing has to do with our safety plan. And we have a very rigorous process to ensure exits are open and usable as we do our phasing. So those, in my opinion, are the two big items, and I'll just go through the list. So at Morrow, we have a TV studio. That's a Resolution A project. Resolution A projects are projects funded by your elected. The next one is IS 240. There's an exterior project there with a completion date of August 2022. We just finished the project at I-381/K197, exterior modification, modernization. That has been what we call substantially completed. I happen to have driven by there recently, and I just think the building is beautiful there. So that's that project. Let's see, the other one is 152, we have a fire alarm at that school. And 193, we have an AC project, which is almost completed. And we also have an AC project at 245. And at 220 and 249, we have a boiler replacement project that has just about been completed. So those are your projects, those are your active projects. And I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. I'll start with Carl since you're on audio there. If you'd like to start the conversation.
Sure. And so thank you very much, Yvette, for that recap. And so I want to touch, the question I have is about the vaccination. So like you mentioned, there has been somewhat of an impact in terms of the people available to do the work since there's that requirement. I guess the question I have is twofold. Number one, do you see any sort of upward trend in terms of the vendors who normally submit bids for this work? And, you know, so does it look like they're increasing their percentages of people who are vaccinated so they can better comply with the mandate? And if you're not seeing that, then does this mean that you're having to look, you know, elsewhere for vendors, right? Like, does this mean there are people outside of New York who are starting to bid, right? Just because the people within the city or the state aren't meeting that criteria? That's my question.
So let me understand, let me repeat, see if I understand these. You're asking about what's the trend right now, and if there's anyone that's responding to the vaccination requirement, whether it's somebody from the outside. I have to honestly say I am not aware of what's going on right now. This just came into effect. You know, we just implemented it as per the city. And so I know that for the immediate, for right now, there is an effect just in general. I mean, there was an article in the paper talking about, you know, that contractors and workers on contracts, construction projects aren't getting vaccinated. So there's a short-term issue at the moment, and I'm not sure that we can respond to any trending around that at this time because I think it's too soon.
Understood.
Yes. Did that answer your question? I think you're asking also, are you asking about projects that are put out to be bid for the future? Again, I'm not sure that we have enough data to respond to that yet.
Yeah, so that was my question. Those were my questions. And you know, when you answered the first one about it was just implemented, so it's hard to tell what that long-term impact will be. And then, you know, to that point, it would also be hard to tell if, you know, other people who normally don't bid are doing that just because of the impact, that it would be hard to tell as well. I understand. So thank you. Yes.
I think in a year we're in a better position to respond to that.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Down the line, sure.
Okay, just tracking some other questions that we have here. If anyone has any questions, certainly just raise your hand. Stephen Cohen, please proceed with your question.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering, you said there was a meeting earlier today with 217 where you informed the principal. I'm just wondering if PTA or parents have been notified at this point.
I do believe we have the PTA person on the call as well. So I'm not, you know, somebody else was on the call from the PTA or a parent coordinator. So I'm sure that they will be notified. And I do know that we hold job committee meetings once a month, and principal, was pushing for us to give an answer. So he wanted that information to pass on to parents. So I'm sure that he will relay it to parents.
Okay, thank you. Sean, by all means, please proceed.
Thank you. Yvette, I just want to, it's a similar question to Carl's, but it's on the materials side. Given the material, sort of getting it, slowing things down, do you know if all needed materials are now on hand? Or is there a potential additional delay on materials that have not yet been received for PS 217? And then while I'm at it, I'll ask my second question all at once. For the PS 139 playground renovation, do you have a plan that would show us exactly what part of the playground will be renovated? And especially if it's the part that the farmers market uses on weekend days, we'll want to make sure that they get along a heads up on, so that they can reorganize themselves accordingly.
Ooh. I don't have the plan on hand right now to share about 139. And so I know the school has it. It's available to the school. So if you'd like, Sean, I can forward it to you and see if we're able to do that. If it's I'm hoping we have a rendering. I'll see what we shared with the school. And if it's something, that we're able to share. A lot of times our drawings are very we don't share things with the public that will show like drainage and piping and that sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, if we have a rendering, I'll be happy to share it with you. Other than that, if it's just a regular architectural drawing, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to share it.
Okay, yeah, no, if there's a topical rendering, that would be appreciated. And I can
Yeah,
also reach out
fine.
directly to the school if that saves you the task. I'm happy to do
Yes,
that.
Principal Harding does have a copy, and I'm sure if you go in, she'll,
Okay,
she'll be able to sit with you on that. Or, you and I can talk. I'm sure there's another way we can figure this out.
thank you.
Okay, sure. In terms of your material for 217, as far as I know, we do have all the materials on hand. As far as I know, that was communicated to us. And so, yes, as far as I know, we do. We just got an order of materials, so
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions at this point for Ms. Knight. I don't know if anyone has any. If not, at this point, I think we could close this portion of our meeting and thank Ms. Knight for all of her information this evening. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you very much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be hearing from you again later in the year.
And so it's been my pleasure, and have a wonderful night and stay safe, everyone. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Carl, I think the only other item I have on our agenda this evening is other business. If there's anything that a member of the committee would like to bring up at this point, otherwise, we will entertain a motion to close tonight's meeting.
Yeah, Greg, on my end, I have nothing aside from, what our attendees and speakers presented to us. So yeah, I have no other business.
Okay. Seeing no other hands, I think that is the consensus. So I think at this point we conclude. Actually, do we even need a motion for our committee meeting? Yeah, okay. So I think all I'll say is thank you all for all the participants this evening. Thank you again for your attendance and participation. And thank you for the conversation this evening. We'll present our findings at next month's main meeting.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you too, folks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, YLC.